Good evening, and welcome to the Trumbull Public Schools Board of Education meeting, Thursday, December 3rd, 2020. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Correspondence, Mrs. Norcel.
The Board of Ed received the following emails since our last meeting. Gloria Manna, an educator, is not satisfied with the explanations and reasoning for the additional week of absence from closure from school. She feels we should have reopened with a hybrid model immediately. She feels that teachers should be retrained in the safety protocols and the Board of Ed should hold teachers accountable. Keep schools open until the data from inside of the school says you can't. Jessica Miller, educator and a Booth Hill parent, recommends we start sending our K-2 students back since they need the school while the rest don't have the same needs. Cheryl Pontino, a teacher of fourth grade in Trumbull, feels our numbers are too high to return to school. She doesn't feel safe going back to school. We just received an email from Sarah Brodus. She wants to thank Dr. Budd for his service to the Trumbull Public Schools, especially for his leadership, dedication, and commitment to our community. She wanted everyone to know he has made a difference in our system. That is our emails.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to recognition. This is the outgoing policy members for the policy committee, and we have new policy members. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gallo.
Thank you. Yes, we have new policy members. Thank you. Yes, we have new policy members that we are going to be adding to the board, to the policy committee. And we are excited to welcome those new members. And of course, we want to thank the members who have served us so proudly over the last year. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Budd, who will give us some recognition.
Excuse me, Dr. Budd. Dr. Budd, excuse me. Mike Ward just called. He needs somebody to help get him on. Did you hear me?
Yes, we heard you.
Okay, well, he called on my phone. That was why the phone was ringing.
Bill, are we seeing him?
I don't see him in the attendee list. I'll resend an invite for him.
I'm sorry.
Jackie, that's okay. Maybe you should text him or call him and tell him Bill is going to send him the invitation again.
I'll go call him. I'll leave the room.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, and back over to Mr. Budd.
Sure.
Dr. Budd.
This item 2B is to recognize the 5 outgoing policy committee advisory members. The board, in its policy, has 3 parent guardian members and 2 community advisory members of the policy committee who serve 2-year terms. And these 5 individuals have ended their 2-year term. And those of us who have served on policy committee with them know that they have put a great deal of time and effort into giving us the perspectives of parents and community members on all sorts of topics that have come up. So I'm very pleased to recognize Michael Buswell, Jeffrey Mullins, and Jatiah Ortiz, who are our outgoing parent guardian members, and Anthony Iannini and Michelle Malone, who are our outgoing community members. In a typical time, we would have them here. We would congratulate them in person, but Mr. Gallo and I have been in touch with them and extended our many, many thanks for their volunteer service.
Absolutely, and we thank them for that service. They really were a wonderful team, and it's been amazing the amount of policy that we have been able to work on in the past couple of years and pass through with such a great committee. So yes, thank you so much for your service.
Okay. All right, is that good? Okay. Public comment. Tonight there is no public comment, so we will move on to the superintendent report. Dr. Semmel.
Great, thank you, and good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I just have a few updates, quick updates, because obviously we want to spend most of our time talking budget tonight. But first, around reopening, students definitely need to have an opportunity to be in our buildings, especially when the Department of Public Health, the governor, State Department of Education, and even Dr. Falsey all agree that we should be in school right now. Our goal is to remain open for our students. I shared a letter with all staff and parents on this past Wednesday that we will reopen on Monday, December 7th, and that letter had plenty of specifics, and that letter is on our website as well. We will continue to follow all of our mitigation strategies, and I urge people to reduce their risk of exposure because of choices that they make outside of school. That's something that's really critical during this time, is that folks are trying to limit their exposure when they're outside of school. Because in fact, I did learn that there was a handful of staff that needed to quarantine most very recently because they were exposed to people over Thanksgiving break. So we know it's out there, COVID is out there, people need to be as careful as possible, but our goal in the Trumbull Public Schools is to make sure that we provide an opportunity for students to be in classrooms with their teachers, and they have the choice to do that, and we need to try to make sure that happens. Number two, I want to give everybody a quick update on the assistant superintendent search. First, I do want to certainly wish Dr. Budd well. We only had a chance to work together for a couple of months, but I certainly enjoyed working with him, and he has shown himself to be a tireless worker. I wish him nothing but great success in Woodbridge, where I'm sure that they're going to have high expectations for Dr. Budd, and that he will meet those expectations on a daily basis. In terms of here in Trumbull, we have had over 40 applicants for our assistant superintendent position when I last checked, and interviews will begin on Wednesday, December 9th. We have a very good group of folks from around the district who will be participating in that round one set of interviews. Brian Ricker and Christina Heffley will be co-chairing that first round, and they've done a great job getting everything organized and ready to go. We expect to bring 2 finalists to the Board of Education, likely at your December 15th Board of Education meeting, to do final interviews. That's at least the way we planned it. That way, before we hit the holiday break, we should be able to offer a contract to a new person, and we can get closer to getting that person started. So that's my update on the assistant superintendent. Number 3, Mr. Hendrickson, they received news today that the coronavirus relief fund, we've actually received our first set of monies for the CRF fund. We received approximately $521,000. This was bringing us from March 1st, so this goes all the way back to March, and the items that were spent all the way through the end of October. And I believe that I'm being told that we'll be submitting the money for November very shortly. So we'll continue to draw down that. And finally, for those folks who are going to be paying attention to the budget workshop discussion, the PowerPoint that we are going through tonight is on our website. So if you go to the Board of Education part of our website, click on budget, you'll be able to scroll right down to what's called Superintendents 21-22, basically budget proposal. You'll open it up as a PDF. That's the PowerPoint that I'll be going through this evening, so you can pull that up and have plenty of time to be ready to go through that with us. So that's the end of my update.
Thank you very much. Next is the board chair report. First of all, I would like to congratulate Dr. Budd on his new position as superintendent in Woodbridge, Connecticut. I want to thank you, Jonathan, on behalf of the Board of Ed, for all you have done to move our system forward. Your dedicated work ethic and unyielding approach to resolve issues in a productive manner is unparalleled. Under your direction, the Curriculum Committee has reviewed and completed 203 curriculum guides, approved 120 new textbooks, and approved 64 new course offerings in the past 5 years. Such a remarkable accomplishment. Our policy committee has reviewed and approved 37 new policies and revised 149 existing policies. Another admirable feat. Our teacher evaluation committee was resurrected from the dead to a working task force for all certified personnel. Our ELL department has grown and flourished. Your intellect, diligence, seamless preparation, insight, professionalism, and legal acumen, as our board experienced, will serve you masterfully in your new position. We thank you and we all wish you the very best of success. Godspeed, Jonathan.
Here, here.
Our next is the teacher BOE representative report. Hello, Matt? Okay, is he there?
Coming in.
Yes, there he is. Bill, is he there?
He's coming in.
He's there.
Good evening. All right. I think we're ready to go here. Like everyone else, I'd like to start by saying how happy teachers are to be able to congratulate Dr. Budd on his new endeavor. We know how transformative his leadership can be, and we wish him and Woodbridge the best of luck. Piggybacking on Dr. Semmel's comments, TPS has, like many other surrounding districts, moved to remote learning for a couple of weeks to try to slow the rate of infection and transmission of COVID-19. Teachers believe that students learn best when in person, but they also care for the health of their students and fellow members of faculty and staff. And so we recognize the necessity of a temporary building closure for students. We are able to say that remote learning in fall of 2020 is nothing like the emergency learning of spring 2020. Teachers have access to the resources in their buildings and classrooms, access to new technologies and apps which help to increase student engagement. Drive by any school and you'll see many cars in the parking lot. Teachers continue to come to school every day to provide high quality instruction for their students. We do have concerns about the current trends in infection though. According to the website covidactnow.org, the current condition in Fairfield County is labeled critical, with daily new cases tracked at 56.6 and ICU headroom usage at 83%. The recommendation for schools at this level is to enable remote learning for all students, and all government levels should invest in remote learning. In addition, in the Wednesday New York Times, Dr. Fauci is quoted as saying to keep indoor gatherings as small as you possibly can, and that doing so would prevent people from getting infected. Dr. Birx is quoted in the same article as saying that if you travel over the holiday, you have to assume that you were exposed and you became infected. It's because of these circumstances that a recent poll conducted by the TEA has found out that 260 elementary teachers currently believe, out of 260 elementary school teachers, currently 76.2% believe that remote is the best course for us at this time. Similarly, for middle school, 124 teachers, 77.4% believe that remote is the best course for the time being. And then finally, at the high school, out of 163 respondents to the survey, 87.1 wish to remain remote at this time. As teachers, we look forward to the day we can safely see our students in person in the classroom. But until that day, we are committed to providing a high quality learning experience for our students, even when we are engaged in remote learning. Teachers are pleased that the district has continued to show its support for high quality distance learning by providing teachers with access to technologies like Pear Deck Premium and Google Enterprise. Since the initial announcement of the Google Enterprise rollout 2 weeks ago, teachers have been eagerly awaiting access to the new tools like Meet Breakout Rooms, Meet Instant Polls, and Plagiarism Checker and Google. These tools have become more essential now that we have had to temporarily move to remote learning. The breakout rooms are especially important for our special ed students who otherwise would have to navigate to separate Meet on their own. Having breakout rooms that the classroom teacher can set up reduces the number of steps that students have to take in order to get to the small group support that they need. And I can tell you that I had access to them for the first time today, and they are fantastic. And I use them in all my classes immediately, and I look forward to being able to use them throughout the rest of the year. Moving on, the discussion of a new budget is an opportunity to make changes that will improve our school district. Over the past 5 years, the curriculum demands placed on the business teachers at Trumbull High School have continually increased. The TEA is once again requesting that these teachers be considered teachers of a major academic subject and have their course load reduced to 5 classes per day, starting in the 2021-2022 school year. There's currently nothing in the CBA that prevents Trumbull from altering their status. It would require a modification to the budget, and it would require another business teacher be hired for the 2021-2022 school year. It goes without saying that adding additional tools and services comes with an additional cost, and teachers appreciate the balancing act that Dr. Semmel undertakes during the budget season. Knowing that these impact our ability to effectively teach Trumbull students, teachers anxiously await the results of the audit ordered in February, which will help to explain the $1.2 million shortfall that the board was saddled with after the departure of many of the top-level administrators in 2019 and early 2020. Finally, it's with sadness and frustration to have to report that there have been several more instances of classes being interrupted by hate speech on live Google Meets. These instances are in addition to the one in the last TEA report at the November 10th Board of Ed meeting. This new outbreak of bullying and hate speech has occurred in the Google Meet classrooms of numerous teachers who have themselves been the target of homophobic and racial slurs made by students who entered these meets anonymously. We are troubled to think that this is coming from a small minority of our community. We are angered by the unsafe environment that it creates in our classes, and we are frustrated by the apparent inability of district administration and law enforcement to find those responsible and demonstrate that this behavior will not be tolerated by issuing consequences for these acts. We are requesting that administration and law enforcement exhaust all efforts to ensure that that students are penalized for making homophobic and racist statements in Google Meets in order to set an example and stop this behavior from happening. We believe that classes like the one approved by the Board of Ed at the last meeting are a step in the right direction. Efforts are currently underway at the high school to bring in the ADL to offer programming and training, but more needs to be done. In addition to the new one-semester elective in social studies, we need to reinstate English classes in women's literature and the literature of social justice, which were eliminated as course offerings in 2018. We're also looking forward to the creation of the steering committee as proposed by Dr. Semmel, which will help to further expand curriculum offerings in addition to other actions which will work towards eradicating the ignorance which leads to these hateful actions. It was only a short couple of months ago that members of the community were working to rally at the Indian Ledge Park against bullying in our community. Teachers of Trumbull agree that bullying has no place in our community, and we believe that what is printed on the signs that you see on school property, that hate has no home here. Thank you very much.
What you've done. I know I will go to these meetings.
Okay. Oh, hi, Mike Gordon. Thank you. You're finally there. That's great. Okay, what I'd like to do right now is Mrs. Tesoro there? Vicki, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I'm here.
You've spoken right after me. I think you wanted to say a few words.
I do. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Tim Pinelli. Good evening, everybody. Everybody had a nice Thanksgiving. I want to share the gratitude of our community with Dr. Budd and thank him for all of his hard work and dedication. We appreciate everything you did for our school system over the last 6 years. Congratulations, Dr. Budd. I wish you the best of luck in your new position in Woodbridge and in the future. Also, I sent a note to the staff of our school system right before Thanksgiving, but I want to take this opportunity as an additional opportunity to thank our teachers, staff, administrators, parents, and students as you continue to navigate and work so hard through these challenging times. This year has certainly placed a burden on all of you that is both unprecedented and incredibly demanding. And I want you to know I support all of you. We need to be cognizant, however, and reactive to the virus data as we move forward. Thank you all again as we work together to get through these very difficult times. I am happy to hear, according to Dr. Semmel just this evening, that we have received a portion of the CRF funds. Thank you all as we continue to seek all possible funding to help our district deal with this pandemic. Thank you again, and good evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Tesoro. Okay, moving on, I'm going to need a motion for the minutes of our meeting of 11/10/2020.
Jackie, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the November, I don't know the meeting date off, Rose, Lucinda.
November 11th, 2020.
Okay, November 11th, 2020.
Okay, I need a second.
This is Tim. I second that motion.
All right, Mr. Gallo seconds. All right, anyone with a question on the minutes? No? Okay, we will take the vote. Mrs. Pati? Mr. Gallo?
Yes, in favor.
Mr. Care?
Yes, in favor.
Mrs. Norcell?
In favor?
Mr. Palo?
In favor.
Mr. Ward?
In favor.
Mrs. Timpanelli in favor. Thank you, it's unanimous. Okay, moving on, personnel, Dr. Summer.
All right, with personnel, we have a few different categories. We're going to start with the resignations. And as we've heard a couple times tonight, we do have the resignation of Dr. Jonathan Budd, Assistant Superintendent since July 2015, resigning effective December 13th, 2020. We also have Margaret Fidel, special education teacher at Jane Ryan Elementary School since August 1995, retiring effective January 29th, 2021. And in our non-certified resignations, we have Stephanie Piazza, secretary at Trumbull High School since September 1998, retiring effective November 27th, 2020. And our recommendation is that you accept these resignations.
All right,
Okay, so I would like to make the motion to accept the resignations of Jonathan Budd, the Assistant Superintendent since July 2015. And Margaret Fidel, the special education teacher at Jane Ryan since, and who will be since August 1995, retiring effective January 29th. And the resignation of Stephanie Piazza, secretary at Trumbull High School since September 1998, retiring effectively November 27, 2020.
I need a second. Mrs. Pati seconds. Okay.
At this point, I would like to give Dr. Budd an opportunity to say a few words.
Yes, he does. He did ask to do that. Come up, Dr. Budd, please.
Thank you very much. I was asked before the meeting how many board or committee meetings I've gone to in the past 5.5 years, and I did start to count that. But I thought what would be more meaningful is these numbers, which is that in those 5.5 years, I have worked with 16 board members, 2 first selectmen, 3 superintendents, 3 business administrators, and 3 PPS directors. And I'm glad a certain person got on the call, because out of all those 27 people, the one person who has been the same since July 2015 to now is Mr. Ward. And I distinctly remember in May 2015, when I interviewed with the board, and Mr. Ward was a member then, as he was now, and he did not ask any tough questions like some colleagues did, which was fine. But he made a point of talking about how he saw the role of the board as to really support the central office leadership. And he said, you need to make sure that you're straightforward about the support you need, because we're here as a board to support you. And I want to make sure it's on the record that I have felt very supported for 5.5 years by many, actually all of those people I mentioned. All 16 board members, First Selectman Herbst, First Selectman Tesoro, and my central office colleagues. And I also want to say that the very significant detail work of the Assistant Superintendent's office would not be possible without the great support staff we have of Kathy Bosley, Lori Ritz, and Maria Vaz. But the thing is, and I wanted to make this point, I've often said that the work we do is based on a strong team. And it takes very, very good listening to make a team work. Not superficial listening, not listening limited to increments of time, not listening with predetermined outcomes, but honest, sincere listening to lots and lots of people. And then ultimately it's about the students. So those numbers of policies, curriculum guides, new courses, very important, but Whether it's policies of operations or advancing kids into new learning opportunities, the decisions have to matter to the students. So I will always value the opportunity Trumbull has given me to help lead the team to make decisions important to children. And the Trumbull community, the strong building administrators, the strong teachers, the strong parents, and the strong support staff in the schools will continue to do great things as long as they are truly listened to, and as long as students remain the key focus. I value the Board of Education very much for all the opportunities you have given me to help lead the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Body.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we do have the motion, and we would need a second for those resignations.
I'll second it.
All right, Jackie seconds. Anyone else with a comment? No? Okay, we will take the vote. Marie Pati? Tim Gallo?
I'm in favor.
Scott Kier?
Yes, in favor.
Jackie Norcell?
In favor.
Andy Palo?
In favor.
Mike Ward?
In favor.
And Lucinda Timpanelli in favor. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, so we still have more personnel pieces.
Go ahead.
So the next one is actually a rescission of retirement. On November 10th, 2020, the board accepted a June 2021 retirement letter from Lauren Pacquiao, science teacher at Madison Middle School since August 1999. Ms. Pacquiao is requesting that the board accept rescission of her letter as she intends to return to teaching for the 21-22 school year. And our recommendation is that you accept the rescission of Ms. Pacquiao's letter of retirement effective immediately.
Okay, I need someone to make a motion.
So I will make the motion to accept the rescission of the retirement of Lauren Pacquiao, science teacher at Madison Middle School since August 1999.
I need a second.
This is,
I'll
I'll
second.
second that.
Scott Kerr is seconding. Big second. Okay, anyone with a question or a comment? No? Okay, all in favor? Mrs. Pati? Tim Gallo?
I'm in favor.
Scott Kier?
In favor.
Jackie Norcell?
In favor.
Andy Palo?
In favor.
Mike Ward?
In favor.
And Lucinda Timpanelli in favor. Okay, that's unanimous.
And one last piece of information, one last piece, it's a request for a leave of absence. Belinda Papageorge, English teacher at Trumbull High School since August 2001, is requesting a personal leave of absence without pay effective November 24th through June 30th, 2021. And this request complies with the Trumbull Board of Education leave of absence policy 4150, and we recommend that you approve the request for a personal leave of absence for Mrs. Papageorge.
So I would make the motion for the request of a leave of absence for Belinda Papageorge, English teacher at Trumbull High School since August 2001.
I need a second.
I'll second that, Lucinda.
Okay, Mrs. Marcel seconds. Okay, any comment? No? Okay, Mrs. Pati? Mr. Gallo?
I'm in favor.
Scott Kier?
In favor.
Jackie Marcel?
In favor.
Andy Palo?
In favor.
Mike Ward?
In favor.
And Lucinda Timpanelli in favor. That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Okay, is that it?
Yeah.
Dr. Semmel? Okay. All right, moving on. The approval of the new policy committee advisory members. Mr. Gallo.
Yeah, so we are excited to welcome the new members to the policy committee. The following members were who sent in applications and were spoken to about their commitment, and we are excited to have this new group taking over for the very competent group that we had in the past. The parent guardians group is Ephraim Diaz, Katie Lynn, and Cassandra Perrone. And the community members are Roy Fuchs, Amanda Harmon, and those are our new 5 members to the committee.
Well, thank you to the new 5 members and good luck on policy.
So I would make a motion to approve the new members. And again, their names have all been stated. So can I get a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
All right, Andy Palo seconds. Okay, all in favor. Mrs. Pati? Mr. Gallo,
I am in favor.
Dr. Care,
Yes, in favor.
Jackie Marcel,
In favor.
Andy Palo,
In favor.
okay, Mike Ward,
In favor.
and Lucinda Timpanelli in favor. Thank you. That's unanimous.
And we welcome our new members.
Welcome. Okay, policy committee, it's Dr. Bud and Mr. Gallo.
Would you like to start, Dr.
Sure.
Buck?
Well, yes, this is a second reading of what the board saw as a first reading on October 27th. The state of Connecticut has asked all local districts to have a policy during the COVID-19 pandemic related to face coverings, so that all members of the community, whether staff or parents, really know what the requirements are and what the procedures would be for the limited rare times when a face covering would receive an exemption. And I can tell you that I can count on one hand the number of exemptions we have from that in the district now. The policy you're seeing for second reading is the same as you saw for the first reading, with one exception. If you look at paragraph 2 on page 1, one of the board members suggested at the last meeting that we clarify that since the exemption requests are going to go to school nurses, that the individual school nurses will consult with Lynn Steinberg, the town director of nursing, for guidance on any exemption notes they receive. And that has been the practice. And so it makes a lot of sense to put that in the policy as well. And then the town has consistency across the board. So that's the addition. Everything else is quite straightforward from the legal requirements that the state has for the face coverings. And the policy committee certainly would ask you to support this tonight.
Great, and I would make the motion, and then there can be some discussion if there is any. So I would like to make the motion for the change in policy 5141.9 face coverings to the new proposed policy. Do I have a second for that?
We need a second.
This is
I'll
Scott.
second.
I'll second
Mrs.
that.
Patiti, second. Okay, and any comments?
I'm happy to see we added that information to that part. So thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. I believe that was your suggestion, and we policy committee agreed with that as well.
Yeah, I would thank just the fact that we're thanking that someone listens and then makes a change, not because I made it, but the fact that we really do listen and make changes.
Okay, we're going to take the vote. Mrs. Patiti, Tim Gallo,
I'm in favor.
Dr. Care,
Yes, in favor.
Jackie Norcell,
In favor?
Andy Palo,
In favor.
Mike Ward,
In favor.
and Lucinda Timpanelli in favor. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, Dr. Bud, stay there because I think you're coming up on curriculum, correct?
Yes.
All right, it's Dr. Bud and Mr. Ward.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we had our final meeting this past week, finishing up on some things that the teachers have been working on. I apologize for my lateness to the meeting. Bill Chin and my technician, my daughter-in-law, were working diligently to get me into the meeting, but this is our final meeting for the year and our final meeting with Dr. Bud. I thank him for his kind words. He will certainly be missed. I'm sure that wherever he goes, he takes a little bit of Trumbull with him, as I know him. I will turn over now to Dr. Bud for a little discussion of our final curriculum. Dr. Bud.
Thank you, Mr. Ward, and it's been a pleasure to work with you and the prior curriculum committee members as well, Ms. Timpanelli, Ms. Patiti, Ms. Seaman, and Mr. Patel. These 4 curriculum guides all come from the November 30th curriculum committee meeting. They represent work all at the high school level over the past 6 months or so. The first, Honors Algebra 2, is based on a new textbook that the board approved to replace an outdated textbook that didn't match new expectations of the Connecticut core standards or the revised SAT. And Ms. Shevlin came and spoke to the committee on behalf of herself and Ms. Payne to talk about how the new textbook has introduced stronger mathematical modeling into the curriculum. And I believe, I won't speak for them, but I believe the committee members were impressed that we have quite a number of Trumbull students very successful in Honors Algebra 2, including as freshmen. The second curriculum guide we have is Anatomy and Physiology, which we're pleased to have as a senior science elective. It tends to appeal to students pursuing medical health science fields. And we have revised the curriculum so that students can take it at the ACP, Advanced College Prep level, or the honors level in the same classroom during the same period, with the honors students doing additional extension assignments. That has allowed stronger or easier scheduling of students into the course. And Ms. Manner spoke about several sections of this course and how it pursues the various anatomical parts of the human body. The third of these 4 curriculum guides is our Italian 2 curriculum. This represents the 3 different levels of Italian 2 in one guide: conversation, culture, the ACP level, and honors Italian 2. And like the honors algebra 2 curriculum guide, this one is linked to the new textbook, Sentieri, which matches the new Actable World Language Standards and also allows students a stronger pathway forward toward advanced Italian in the 4th year. And finally, we have advanced placement, Spanish language and culture. I will say, of the 203 curriculum guides we've done, I'm actually proud that this particular one is the 203rd, because it is a revision from 1999. So we have moved this right into the 21st century, and Ms. Costantini spoke to us about nearly 50 seniors at Trumbull High School who are successful in advanced placement Spanish. And that's even though we offer 4 languages at Trumbull High School. We have 50 students in the highest level of Spanish. And in fact, this curriculum has been revised to match the new College Board exam requirements. And I should also say that not only are these students successful by our typical metrics, but they excel on the College Board examination every single May. So I'm very proud to bring these 4 curriculum guides to you, and certainly the curriculum committee recommends you approve them tonight.
Okay, I would like someone to make a motion, Mrs. Pati.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to, I found it, sorry. To approve honors algebra 2, anatomy and physiology, Italian 2, and advanced placement Spanish language and culture.
I need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mrs. Marcel seconds. All right, any comments from anyone?
Madam Chairman, just a quick comment. During our discussion, it was pointed out how far advanced our students are in algebra 2. Mrs. Pati did make a good discussion that night, being a math instructor, as you remember, Marie, how well we were doing in math. And the second one, the language department, and Mrs. Tipinelli will know that, do exceptionally well, do very well on any kind of national standards. We are very proud of our language arts for our language department, aren't we, Mrs. Tipinelli?
Oh, yes, we are. Thank you.
That's all I have for comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Pati.
So having been with Dr. Budd and of course, Ms. Timpinelli, Mr. Ward on curriculum for 5 years, 4 from his chair, I know how much work Dr. Budd and his staff have put in. Super impressed what we've done with the curriculum. I think in the last 5 years has moved forward. We're offering courses really to all our level of students, the opportunities. As I said, Algebra 2 opening, I was very impressed having taught the subject myself, seeing what we're offering, and that we had quite a few students starting the freshman year, which allows them to go into something like multivariables or Calc 3 by their senior year. Big difference from when my son was in school, where they had to go to Sacred Heart to even take just Calc 2. So I think Trumbull has moved in the right direction, but I know the work that Dr. Budd and his staff have put in. Very proud.
Team.
Right, and I want to thank all the teachers for their hard work too. They answer a lot of different questions for us when they come up, and they explain the nuances of the courses and what they're trying to keep everything current. And we're really impressed by what they present. And when we do new courses, we're always happy to see that these courses come from their passion. They want to teach these things. So we're always excited when they come in and bring new courses to us, because it comes grassroots, and we thank them for that. Okay, we have a motion and a second. I am going to take the vote to accept all these. Mrs. Pati?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Gallo?
I'm in favor.
Mr. Crare?
In favor.
Marcel,
In favor.
Mr. Pallo,
In favor.
Mr. Ward,
Yes, in favor.
Mrs. Timpanelli in favor. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Dr. Bud, thank you very much for everything. Okay, we're moving on. This is the budget presentation and discussion. Dr. Semmel, Mr. Hendrickson, and staff.
Yeah, it's our pleasure to introduce the 21-22 budget to everybody. What we're going to do as part of this presentation is myself, Mr. Hendrickson, are going to lead off the beginning of the presentation and do some overall conversation about the budget. What you should have in front of you is the PowerPoint presentation that I shared. It's also on our website. And for people playing at home, they can follow through because, like I said, it's under the budget section of our website. We'll continue to place our information there as we update, as we go through the whole process. So I do want to start by saying that I believe the budget is one of the most important documents that you must work on a yearly basis. The reason it's most important, or one of the most important, is because it identifies the priorities for the district. Where are you going to put your money? How do we spend our money on our students? And so that's what makes it so critical. And I want to tell you that putting this together over the last 2 months, getting to know Trumbull, getting to understand the situations here in Trumbull, and being able to work with all the staff that I did in order to get this together has been very rewarding for me. It's been challenging, but in order to present this tonight, we really had a chance to talk to a number of people. Principals in particular, Paul Hendrickson, the business manager, and Peg Brindisi also have just been amazing as we went through this process. So I'm going to, there's a few slides here at the beginning. Obviously, some of the key people in terms of putting the budget together are the members of the Board of Education, Central Office Administration, and all of our school principals. Let's see if our clicker is going to work. Give me a second here. Our Cracker Jack technician here is getting this to go for me. There we go. So obviously, the mission of the district, and I'm not going to read these slides to everybody, but obviously the mission is what drives the work we do here in the district. The other thing that drives our work will be our education goals that we've adopted back in, boy, it feels like a long time ago now, but it was back in September where we adopted the Board of Education goals. So just as a reminder, we have our safety goals, our teaching and learning goals, we have our budget goals, and we have our communication and social justice goals. So it wouldn't be surprising as we look at the budget that those types of items come through as part of the strands of the budget. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hendrickson to talk about the next few slides regarding some of the overall budget request information. So Mr. Hendrickson, why don't you take it from here?
Okay, I don't want to read all the slides, but with Dr. Semmel, we are trying to rebuild what Trumbull had in the past, and we're having some initiatives on the personnel front and rebuilding that. The recognition of problems in special revenue funds, and we are requesting that those be funded. The salaries include contractual increases and a reserve for negotiations. However, that reserve was decreased this coming year because implicit in all the salaries for the upcoming negotiations, we put in nominal amounts for those potential increases. Also, I spoke with our healthcare consultant, Rob Fitzpatrick at Brown & Brown. The medical insurance increase is estimated at 6%. That includes a 3.5% Fairfield County adder, and our dental rate should remain flat. The dental premium and cost shares are based on current membership and coverage. We also look back at the savings we can get through teacher turnover, and then we assume that to be for participation in athletics is at $165 for non-hockey sports. And classroom equipment, and this is included in Jeff Hackett's technology budget, is the waterfall lease analysis, where we have at any one time 4 staggered 4-year term loans to purchase technology. And the transportation budget is based on our contractual agreement. You will see that it's going up approximately 18%. However, that's somewhat of a misnomer because we took a credit that was associated with the 19-20 school year and applied it to the 2021 school year, which created an artificially low starting point. So there's no increase in buses or in just a nominal contractual rate. And I have split out the 21-22 budgets by expenditure category. You can see that as in most districts, salaries and benefits account for over 80% of the budget. And if you throw in transportation and energy, you would probably be up over 90%. So really the so-called discretionary part of the budget is about 10%. Next page. And this is the primary drivers behind the increase in the budget. Benefits are the major driver of 1.6 million, transportation of 950,000. The new staff that's being requested by Dr. Semmel, 477,000. The special revenue funds, excuse me, which are dedicated towards tech ed, strings, and also school lunch at 430. All other at 422,000. Utilities 216, and salaries 211. And special ed housing placements approximately flat. Next slide, please. And this is a different way of recasting that. It shows the increases year to year, and subtotal of salary and benefits go up 1.66%. And then when you throw transportation on that, it goes up $949,000, but that is due to that artificially low starting point. So that adds 0.87 to the 3.94 total increase. Special ed is essentially flat, a slight increase in energy and utilities, and get to 2.72% for everything above that line. And then the staff changes of $477,000 would increase it just shy of 0.5%, and the special revenue accounts about 0.39%, and the remainder of that, all other, is 0.39%. And all other is broken out below in the different categories that those budget items appear. So next page, please. Okay. This is just recasting on the previous page, but to go over the salaries were reviewed for teachers and admin personnel to ensure that they were on the proper staff. Those accounted for 74% of the salaries. We reduced the reserve for negotiation, so the net salary increase year to year is very small. Healthcare insurance, as I said, is going up 6%. The FICA wasn't increased last year, actually it decreased on a budget item. So I made it a 2-year jump between 2020 and 122 because it appeared to me to be unreal to expect that. And just a reiteration of what I did on the previous page. We'll go to the next page, which we get into more detail. Under the supplies, the big items are the increase in online subscriptions of $65,000, which Dr. Budd will address in his presentation. And then library books of 44,000, largely because library books were not funded last year in any school. And 126,000 in computer equipment, to which Mr. Hackett will address in his presentation on technology. These are, this is classroom computer equipment. TPS is requesting additional consulting time. The legal, we reviewed both regular legal and TPS and decided it could go down slightly, and the rest is relatively negligible. At the bottom of the page, all other going up 763,000. That includes an increase in not outplaced tuition, but tuition to attend magnet schools in Bridgeport of $225,000. Since we settled the dispute with them, we will now go to paying them for attending for this year and going forward. All past year disputes are resolved. It includes building equipment for $160,000 and the funding of the 205 accounts for $430,000. So next page, please.
All right, so on this particular page, this is a DIRT B comparison. And this is usually in the budget book, and I think this is important, this slide and the next slide. One thing that the Department of Education is able to do is be able to share the net cost per pupil charge. So it's essentially an apples to apples cost when you look at all the different districts. So you're able to look to see how much we're spending per child in Trumbull versus all the other districts. And in this particular slide, it shows the information compared to DIRT B. So Trumbull's in a DIRT B, so we compare across the entire state to all the DIRT B. And you can see where Trumbull falls on this particular line, where the red line near the bottom there, 17 out of 21. In this particular comparison, Trumbull spends about $1,200 less per child than the average DIRT B school. And if you looked at it from a median perspective, it'd be about $1,000 less per child. So that's about between $6.8 and $8.2 million spent less for our children than if we were at the average. So if we actually spent the average cost, we'd be spending somewhere between 6.8 and 8.2 million, depending on if you use the mean or the median as that average kind of number. I'm not here recommending we need to spend that much, but I think it puts us in perspective that the Trumbull Board of Education is not overspent, because you're well below the average when you look compared to all other districts that are considered a DIRT B district. And as a reminder, the DIRGs essentially look at the wealth of the town, basically the ability to pay. It's more complicated than that, but I'm not going to go into all the details about what goes into a DIRT. So when the next slide is about the area towns. So this particular slide shows how Trumbull fits in with all the towns essentially in the Fairfield County area. So when you look at this, the numbers actually are even worse for Trumbull. When you look at all these numbers, we would actually need to spend close to $19 million to get to the average. So if we added $19 million to our budget tonight, you would essentially be at the average. Although if they add any more money to their budget, you still wouldn't make it to the average. So you can see how far away we are from that average per pupil cost when you compare us to the rest of the towns. Again, we're not asking for $19 million, but it does relatively situate us in terms of how much we're spending per child versus how much other districts are spending per child. Certainly, we always appreciate every single dollar we receive. This is tax dollar money, and every dollar that we receive is an important dollar, but I think these graphs make it show that we are certainly not over-resourced here in Trumbull. Yet we continue, you heard from the curriculum discussion as one, we continue to provide a very high-quality education to our students. And that's what our parents expect, that's what our town expects, and we need to be able to continue to do that. But I do believe that you may have kind of hit your low as we went into last year. When you look at all the reductions you needed to take, you're kind of scraping the bottom about where your resources can be, because quite frankly, we're not able to support our children like we used to. That's just the facts of having to cut that much staff. So next slide. Here's an overview of the personnel changes that you're going to hear about over the next 2 meetings. I'm not going to talk about each one, but be aware that when the folks that come up to talk about their budgets, you're going to hear about all of these. So we're looking to add that math interventionist for the middle schools. That is a very high priority for the middle school principals. When I show that 0.5 math specialist for elementary schools, it's because we currently have a 0.5 FTE, a half-time position in the budget, which is actually, when we add this 0.5, we'll end up having 1.0, so we'll end up having 4 math interventionists, math specialists for the district. You see the bilingual tutor. Dr. Bud will talk more about that, how it's a state requirement, and yes, an unfunded mandate. There's a wellness teacher at the high school that needs to be added. That's also could be considered an unfunded mandate because they changed the graduation requirements on us a few years. And then you see some of the other positions that you'll hear about. Additional personnel changes that I want to spend a little bit more time talking about, myself in particular, is the director of HR and the director of operations. So in terms of the director of HR, you'll find the potential job description on pages 2.8 and 2.9 in your budget binders if you wanted to follow along. Those documents are also online. If you go to section 2, you would see them in 2.8 and 2.9. But for a district of 1,000 staff members to not have a director of HR, someone who's specifically trained on doing this, is asking for trouble. And so we really do need to add a director of HR. In fact, in this district, you've had a director of HR. There's been a person and there's not been a person. So you recognize the importance of it. And in fact, you put it into your budget for 1920. It just didn't come about because of all the cuts. But our director of HR would be required to really focus on attracting and retaining the highest quality staff. That's first and foremost a major responsibility. They need to manage the non-certified and certified staff, making sure the record keeping, the oversight of staff contracts is taken care of. They would participate in the negotiations. They would participate in the conducting of our investigations. Right now, that falls to our assistant superintendent position because there's nobody else in the district right now to do it. That role about doing Title IX, Title VI investigations would fall to the HR director. Compliance with all labor laws would fall to this, plus everything else that we put in this draft document that's a little over a page. And you can take a look at that. So that's one position that we think is really critical for running this district much more efficiently and making sure that we're following all legal responsibilities as it comes to human resources. Oops, sorry. The second one is the director of operations, which you'll find the job descriptions on page 210 and 211. Also, this is another really critical position for this district. You guys ended up having to make some important, just had to make a lot of cuts last year. And in terms of putting this budget together, I took a look at what was really needed and reconceptualized what needed to be added back. And this is the director of operations position. They would be responsible for the supervision of maintenance, custodial, food service, tech, and transportation. They would make sure that the bids that we put out there are in line with what the town is expecting us to do. They would be a big part of the budget prep for each of those areas they supervise. The building renovation projects would be a very important part of their work. The development of the capital improvement plan and making sure that the work done in the capital improvement plan would be very important. Management system. Though, besides all the other things in the job description, I'm just highlighting a few of those important pieces. Right now, you don't have a person really doing that. You've got a great person in John Morello who's really been stepping up and doing a great deal of work. We've had an interim person named Dave Irwin who's really stepped up and done a lot of this work as well and helped out. Paul Hendricks as the business manager has helped out. Myself as a superintendent has helped out. We don't mind doing that. But in order to help this district really be run efficiently, you need to have a position that's like this. And then the third position, you're going to hear Ms. Heffley speak much more about when she speaks. So I'm not going to speak to that right now myself. This is a proposed organizational chart if we were to add those positions. I just wanted to include it in the budget documents so you can see where the director of HR would fall in the organizational chart, and you also see where the director of operations would fall. So they would report to the business administrator and be responsible for all those other pieces. Right now, a lot of those other pieces fall directly to the business administrator. And with a $113 million budget, you want your business administrator thinking about the dollars every day, the dollars, making sure everything that is connected with that makes sense and is spent as efficiently and judiciously as possible, and finding other ways to reduce costs. But when you have so many other responsibilities, you get pulled in so many different directions. So those are some important high-level central office positions we're looking for. Now I'm going to turn my attention a little bit to the enrollment. So this slide shows that our projected enrollment is around 6,751 students. Because you guys use NSDEC as the search process, we were able to get them to do actually an enrollment study for us for no extra charge. So they were actually able to do this additional information for us. I pulled out one of the pages for this presentation tonight. I think it's important to note that NSDEC is expecting our population to grow pretty significantly, but steadily over the next decade. And so you should probably look at that section of the book. I want to say that's in section 3, I apologize. I want to, all the part around enrollment, maybe it's 4. It's 5. So in section 5, you'll find all the enrollment pieces. So you can look at the detailed description. You've got Malone and McBroom who did a very fine report for you a couple of years ago. And now you've got this NSDEC kind of layered on top of it, so you get a chance to see what's happening. And we will need to look closer at how any of the building projects are going to affect future years. We looked closely at that. Dr. Budd has had some conversations. It doesn't look like it's going to be a significant impact going into the 21-22, but we do need to stay on top of how any of the additional housing units that are being provided will affect your overall enrollment. Another thing that you guys typically look at is just school by school. So this particular document shows you, I think very clearly, this was a document you used in the past. We changed it up a little bit to my own liking, but you can see school by school, grade by grade, what we're anticipating in terms of maybe potentially increasing a section at a grade level, or potentially decreasing. Those red triangles mean we're going to take the reduction now, and those green pluses mean we're going to take the addition now. So, but we're gonna have to watch those green and red ovals as we progress into the school year. Because, you know, it's only December, early December, and things can change quite a bit. But for budgeting purposes, we're gonna take the red triangles and green pluses as fact for now. I do want to make sure I make a point, and Dr. Budd and I've had a few conversations about this. He's been very helpful in these conversations. Kindergarten is a bit of an unknown, and it's going to be a bit of an unknown for a lot of districts because we don't know what we don't know. Parents who had children of kindergarten age for this year could have chosen to do nothing. They could have decided just to keep their kids at home and not enroll them. And so we will find out whether or not we're going to get a bit of a bubble kindergarten class going into next year. I know Dr. Budd started to do some inquiries. He's opened up the process to allow people to start enrolling for kindergarten. But as we all know, some people wait and some people move in, you know, in the summer. So those numbers could change. I'm just pointing it out. We will need to really pay attention to the kindergarten numbers as we move through the year. So that last chart turns into this particular page, which means we believe, as we put this budget together, that we could reduce Booth Hill by 1 FTE, Daniels Farm by 2, Jane Ryan by 1, Middlebrook by 1, and we'll also be able to reduce the high school staff by 1 position. And as I put a little note there for the high school, it could be a combination of partial ETF FTEs or a whole FTE, and that would be to be determined. So that's what the enrollment numbers seem to be telling us as we put this budget together. So that's kind of a big picture of where we see that staff and based on the enrollment. So from there, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Hendrickson. We're going to start going into kind of like area by area, and I don't know what you're used to doing. We're certainly comfortable with you stopping us and asking questions as we go through each area. Ms. Brindisi is actually going to be capturing the questions for us in the background. So if we don't have an answer for you tonight, we're going to absolutely try to get an answer for you as soon as possible. All right, so to turn it over to Mr. Hendrickson for this slide around health insurance.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the health insurance goes up 9.69%. The year-to-year figures reflect the health insurance net of premium cost share by the employees. The rate increases 6%. You might wonder why it goes up 9.69%. Well, we did a detailed spreadsheet of all employees by union, by plan, and be that single, couple, or family, and checked it, and that's what it came out. But that's a 6% increase in rate. That does not necessarily imply an aggregate 6% year-to-year in cost, because I don't know what your base was last year as to what the calculations were assumed for your increase and what the actual increase in healthcare was. This 6% increase includes what they call a 3.5% Fairfield County adder. So this assumes a base plan increase of 2.5%. Now, if Dr. Semmel and I were still in Plymouth, we'd be applauding this because up there we got probably a minus 2.5% adder, and we'd have a 0% year-to-year increase. And this is all based on a rollover of existing personnel. And Dr. Semmel just got done showing you increases in FTE and proposed reductions. So we thought it's most reasonable to assume basically the same population for healthcare going forward. Something else affecting the healthcare cost, I went back and looked at the weighted average cost share that was based on in your budget last year, and it was 22.03%. I couldn't find any contract that had a 22% cost share. This year, Our cost share I calculated to be 21.67. So right there is a 1.35% increase due to cost share. Okay, next slide, please.
Can I ask? I'd like to ask the board if anybody has a question on the health insurance, maybe you can ask Mr. Hendrickson right now, and then we'll stop after each one, and if there's a question, we can do it that way. Anyone?
Yeah, I do, Chairman Timpinelli.
Okay, go ahead. That's Andy Payne.
Could we go back to that slide?
Yes.
So why is Fairfield County, the adder, so much higher than the other counties in Connecticut?
Why does Fairfield County pay the most for anything in Connecticut? Is the
Yeah,
question.
but how is that calculated?
By the state. It's, I could get into a long discussion about it, but
Is it claims?
Fairfield, no, it's where the money is. And it's also healthcare costs in Fairfield County are higher. So onto a base plan, say you had a 2% across Connecticut, it would be cheaper to get healthcare up in Plymouth than it would be for a provider down in Fairfield County. So that is some of the rationale behind the adder. I could get you a more detailed explanation, but that is my basic understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else?
I would just, Madam Chair, if I could, and just to go back one more slide to the personnel changes with the reductions, Dr. Semmel.
Yeah.
So we're looking at all the reductions. Do we have a dollar amount connected with this page at all about what those reductions would be?
What we have, I believe, is what Paul put together was essentially a net cost for staff. So when we take the staff that we added and take the staff that we reduced, I think it ended up being around $477,000, if my memory serves me right.
In savings?
No, our final cost, again, Paul can.
Oh, final cost, okay.
Right, so the additional staff that we're adding is more than the staff we're reducing by $477,000. But these reductions obviously help us keep the budget a little more reasonable.
So I think that's important. This is Scott. So that the 477, I had a question that I think I got the answer to, that's also just the salary cost, right? That's not inclusive of benefits, the 477 number?
Hold on one second, because I do believe it actually includes benefits and taxes. Yeah, it includes that 477 includes benefit and taxes. So we're trying to make it as real as possible.
But it is net of these reductions. So we're not just adding $477,000 worth of staff. We're adding more than that, but you're subtracting these reductions.
You got it.
Okay, thank you.
Lucinda, just a question. On the personnel changes, I see the reductions. I know that you have in the thing that Frenchtown will get a teacher. Are there additions in the middle school and high school? Besides
No,
the
there's
one?
not. No.
Okay.
So we didn't see a need to add, I'm sorry, let me go back on that for a second. There's the wellness teacher at the high school.
Right.
Ms. Marcel, but no other staff was being added at those schools.
Just the new staff, but Frenchtown would be addition of a regular classroom teacher?
Yeah, when you look at that earlier slide, when you go back to here, Frenchtown ends up needing to add a section.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, if there are no.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Madam Chairman,
Go ahead, Mike.
can I say?
Yes, go ahead.
That I just want to caution the presentation on the reduction of staff at the elementary level. Every year we look at where we find a teacher. I just want to caution, it's not, we see reductions, but I'm really concerned about as students are enrolled and parents move in, those reductions may be not totally wiped out, but may not be the one you're looking for. But I also want to make a comment for Paul, who has done a super job I've done budgets for over 50 years in town of Trumbull. It's the first one that you put together that is so transparent, so unique, that anybody reads the budget can
Mike, you're
actually
going in and out. I
see
don't know if you're
the
too-
dollar amounts.
Mike, you're going in and out. We can't hear you.
Am I in or out?
You're going in and out when you speak.
Oh, sorry.
Stay
How
close. to the-
about now?
Okay, just go slow.
How's this? Better?
Yes.
Okay.
Better.
I just commented on Paul putting together a very transparent budget. I've been in town several years, I think 50 plus budgets. This is the clearest one I've seen in all the 50 years I've been in town. It's very unique. It's the biggest thing I found. It's very easy for people in the public to read and understand the dollar amounts. I want to congratulate the superintendent and Paul. In a short time they've been here, how well a job they've done. But just costing you the personnel changes, that's all. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you, Mike, but I'd also like to thank the rest of the business office staff. And as Dr. Budd alluded to, the teamwork involved in preparing this, and especially to my assistant Peg Brandisi for working long, hard hours on the budget while submitting COVID relief funds. And I hope you'll pass your comments on to other boards in the town.
You're too modest, Paul. You did a great job.
Okay, moving on. Is there a question anymore on health insurance? If not, we're going to move on to the assistant superintendent.
All right, so we're giving Dr. Buzz his exercise today, so
Yes,
he
we
can
are.
come on up and take care of this particular part of the presentation.
I want to point out there's one typo on this. It's under the executive summary. It doesn't match the year-to-year figure. I didn't get it to Dr. Semmel in time. We'll correct that slide later. The increase is $375,725. Dr. Budd can explain most of it, but it's the increase in online subscriptions plus the magnet school tuition we have to pay.
Thank you, Paul. My preference is to actually speak from the narrative that you have in the budget book. So our department's pages are the first pages in section 6. And you know, many things in the assistant superintendent's budget are technically discretionary. But as a great school system, you've made them not discretionary over time. And I'd encourage that to continue, which is why we put the narrative together to complement the slides, so that hand in hand, we're really making the case that, no, a great school system engages in the things that are in this assistant superintendent budget. So if you turn to page 6.2, what I do in a little more detail is I talk about the 5 areas of the budget that are the most significantly detailed from year to year. And the first on pages 6.2 through 6.4 is based on curriculum writing, which is a theme tonight for a couple of reasons. But in developing the budget, I meet with the principals, the program leaders, the heads of the departments at the high school, and we talk about where we are in the curriculum revision process. And in fact, at the last board meeting, you saw our matrix of our 300 areas of curriculum and moving each one in appropriate ways. And we take into account how many students are in a program of study, if there have been changes in standards or assessments that really would motivate a curriculum revision, the sufficiency of staff for a curriculum revision. And I point out in terms of transparency, everything that gets documented on this chart goes through the curriculum committee ultimately and onto the Board of Education. That's where you see the cycle. So that's the background. If you look at the chart that starts on page 6.3, we have put a significant placeholder into the superintendent, the area of the superintendent's district goal related to social emotional learning. We know that there is a need based on where Trumbull is compared with many other districts to formalize what social and emotional learning looks like in terms of the curriculum. And I know the next assistant superintendent will have that as a key focus. You also will see as you move down slightly in the K-5 realm. Now, we may want to replay my comments about this from last year, is K-5 social studies. Now, K-5 social studies is our last frontier from the 1980s on our curriculum matrix. And we've been doing other great things, and we would have revised it for this year, but for COVID-19. And we were not going to be able to get together the amount of people we need to. K through 5 teachers representing all 6 schools. So what you see in here for K-5 social studies is connected and can be connected well to the social justice goal that the superintendent is talking with you about, but it's also a need. The Connecticut Social Studies frameworks changed in 2015, and almost all of the high school courses, social studies, and all of the middle school social studies courses have been revised since then. But we are talking in K-5 about curriculum from the 1980s and resources largely from the 1980s. And it doesn't match those don't match the standards anymore, and they don't match the richness of what students should learn. Now, having said that, I want to make clear, we've done great work at the K-5 level. We have a reading and writing program that integrates social studies in rich ways. We have new science curriculum K-5, but this next frontier is very important. The others that you see on here from grade 6 to grade 12 largely connect with courses that are next in the curriculum revision cycle. Some of them are the new courses, such as what the board approved in Black, African American, and Puerto Rican Latino studies. Talking about that district goal about social justice, you see United States history, including new diverse voices into that curriculum. But I'm very confident that this is a strong matrix that you can be proud of, and it represents, I should say, this area of the budget, work done outside of contracted hours. For the most part, teachers are paid based on a contracted rate for work they do in the summer. Occasionally, they do it during school vacations, but largely it's summer-based work. And we do that because we know it's very difficult, impossible, and inconvenient to pull teachers out of class to write curriculum. When with the 181 days that the students are here, we want them with the teachers in the classroom for the large part. This work's done in the summer. If you go to page 6.5, we get to the professional development part of the budget. Now, together, it is $110,000, and that's because there's an $80,000 plus a $30,000. This is based on a slight difference on how things are booked, if you will. $80,000 is the line item where professional development funds come from that pay outside providers. So if we send people to Taft for AP training, or if we have somebody from the outside come in for professional development, that comes from that line item. The $30,000, which is called professional development preparation, that's a very good aspect of our budget when we can pay internal people, typically teachers, to lead the professional development. So there's a balance between the two. These lines have decreased over time. I would say that the 110,000 is sufficient, but I would not recommend the board cut below that. That represents a little bit more than $100 per teacher for the year, because we have to take out of that some funds necessary for non-certificated professional development. There are requirements in training on mandated reporting, on bullying, on suicide prevention, on sexual harassment. When we take those placeholders out, this is a little bit more on average than $100 per teacher, and that is a low rate for anything we can do for PD. You go to Taft, for example, which is the thing I just recently mentioned. That is a great program for a week. That is approximately $1,200 for one person. So you can see that we are a little bit at the minimum point there. I would not recommend going further. The textbooks, which is starts on 6.5 and goes to 6.6, that is at $130,000. Now, that is only 5 areas actually, and I do want to talk about this a little bit. The K-5 social studies revision is almost certainly going to necessitate some new texts in the curriculum K-5. We don't know what they are, but we're talking about over 3,000 students in 6 elementary schools that are going to need some updated text. We've also put some important funds in reserve for middle school and high school English. Mr. Braxiak spoke earlier in the general theme of more diverse voices in the text that students read. And finally, the board for the past 2 years has funded a budget to support a new global civilizations textbook, which is the core grade 9 social studies course at Trumbull High School. But we have had to pull that out of the budget in the budget mitigation process. This is a higher and higher necessity every year. Mrs. Rabano would stay right here for many, many minutes talking with you about why the text needs updating. And I would just say the board has supported this initiative in prior years, and I just hope this next year it gets funded, because every year the cost just gets a little higher to do this textbook, right? The next 2 items on 6.6 just deserve a little explanation because they're larger placeholders. Classroom supplies of $100,000. This part of our budget pays for classroom supplies, typically at the K-5 level, that are across schools. So every school has a building-based supplies account. However, if we need, and we do need every year, to purchase consumable science items for every 3rd grader, they come out of this budget, because it's not Booth Hill buying it or Daniels Farm buying it. The district needs every 3rd grader to do that. And there are certain other aspects of our curriculum that get funded out of this, but a large amount is our STEM program, K-5. So while that's a large ticket item, I would say that when you think about the fact it goes to 3,500 students a year, it is not a lot of money per student. The 5th item there, and Mr. Hendrickson mentioned this in terms of an increase, is online subscriptions. And a board member asked today if I could provide more detail on the online subscriptions. So I was able right before the meeting to develop a handout on it, which I'm going to hand out to the people in the room. And immediately after the meeting, I will email it to the rest of the board, and I will get it to the webmaster for posting. But what you will see here is what we have paid for in online subscriptions this year, and the cost of every single one and what it's used for. We are over budget in this year. We knew we would be. We're doing online learning as the major instructional focus. But our cost to date, and I believe that this is where we'll end the year, is $287,582 for online subscriptions. So my recommendation of $300,000 is a conservative recommendation, because this year we've paid $287,000. Now, the reason this has gone up over time is not just because of the pandemic. We have certain resources. For example, you'll see Amplify for grades 6 to 8 science. That's the method by which we deliver the curriculum. There's no textbook anymore. So we've talked about this in the past. The board has saved on purchasing textbooks, but there's an online resource. You'll see some items on here that are for general technology integration, such as Pear Deck, grade transfer. You'll see some items on here that are for student intervention, like Lexia, for students who are needing a reading intervention support at the K-5 level. The last thing I would point out about this is that these items are proprietary. So they increase much faster than the rate of inflation, because this is the vendor that makes the product. And we have invested, like every other district, a lot of time, energy, and resources into using this product for the curriculum. So typically, it goes up more than 4% a year. So this $300,000 is a 4.3% increase over where we are now. It may have to be modified upward later in the budget process, or decisions can be made about ways to reduce certain of these subscriptions, but that's probably a good discussion for the spring, and it certainly will be better informed when all the board has the same handout in front of them, right? The last thing I would mention is the rest of the conversation on pages 6.6 to 6.8 are all the additional budget line items. There has been a merger this year of some line items because of the consolidation of Long Hill departments. So in areas like office supplies, when we had an additional director, we used to have a line such as office supplies that was for the curriculum director, and a separate line, office supplies, for the assistant superintendent. Since that position was defunded and is not recommended in this budget proposal, we have merged those lines. So now there's office supplies together. So that's why sometimes it may appear there's an increase, but it's because we've zeroed out a different line. And on page 6.8, I just want to make the correction official that Mr. Hendrickson did. It's the last bullet, the tuition bullet. Our narrative was finished prior to your approving the Bridgeport settlement. So this that you see on page 6.8, the $225,000 represented the tuition that we believe we're going to have to pay for 6 to 6 magnet school and the regional center for the arts. That's a very good estimate based on the number of kids we believe will be at those programs and the cost that RCA and 6 to 6 will charge. Since that time, however, the settlement has been reached, and now the tuition line also has to encompass the 2 Bridgeport programs, the interdistrict magnet and the aquaculture. So that's why that line is now $450,000. And it is a shocking increase to say it's a $245,000 increase, but it's required. This tuition line is for general and special education students who attend those 4 magnet programs. And we're required by state law to pay the per pupil cost. This is not for outplace tuition. It's for the students who attend those programs. I'd be happy to answer questions about any of that.
Okay, that's what we're going to do right now. If anyone has a question on this presentation, please let me know. No? Okay.
I do want to make one. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Who's that?
Yeah, sorry, I was just getting unmuted. First, just a comment. You know, Dr. Budd, earlier in your remarks earlier, you said that you appreciate the support that you received from this and prior boards, and I want to tell you that it's because you're an incredibly effective communicator, and you've really done a good job, and you always have made your case for the things that you think are important in a very effective way. That makes us want to support it. So congratulations on that. And I think that in the course of your narrative, you answered all the questions that I had. So thank you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Kerr. And I have to say one other thing, because we have a people problem here in the room at Long Hill. After I leave the podium, I have to leave the room because Mrs. Heffley and Mr. Hackett have come in the room while I'm speaking, and now we're over the limit of the amount of people who can be in the room. So I have to say this is my chance to say it for my colleagues, Mr. Kunshaft and Mr. Rickert, Mr. Sullivan, who will come up. You're going to see on their slides, and it relates to what Dr. Semmel said earlier, some restoration modestly of the intervention support that had to be taken away from the budget in May and June. And as the continuity from the spring, I just want to put in perspective where we're coming from with that, right? So unfortunately, the cuts in the spring had to reduce 5 elementary literacy consultants, 3 elementary math specialists, 1 middle school math interventionist, 4 middle school leaders in literacy and math, 2 literacy interventionists at the high school, which is 15 people, plus 3 technology integration specialists, and some other positions too, but those are positions that directly impact teaching and learning. And I promised somebody who does a great job for the district, Mrs. Buckingham, who's our K-5 program leader for literacy, to just remind the board that the 13 literacy consultants that we had up till this year had been in place since 1999 in Trumbull. And if there's anything the board can do to fund even more of the positions that are the direct ones working with kids, I would try to do that, because Mr. Kunshaft, Mr. Rickert, Mr. Sullivan, they'll support what's in this budget, but there's more to be done there. So I wanted to make that case, because then I exited. So thank you very much.
Anyone with a question?
I have one more thing to say, and I have to say it now because it sounds like you're leaving the room. So and I was saving it because I had a motion to make at the very end. But I just wanted to thank you for everything that you've done for us as a district. And you know, in the short time that I've gotten a chance to know you, we have worked very, very closely together. And I didn't get a chance to say it during policy. We even got so much work done tonight. But just an amazing amount of work. And it's been a pleasure working with you. So thank you so much for everything you've done for our district.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bud. No one else has a question?
I do want to add one comment that I've recently learned after putting this budget together. As one of the things that you just heard about is this significant increase in our tuition to Bridgeport. One thing I've learned as I went through this budget process, and I need to ask a few more questions, is I learned that the money for our Ag Sci program, the revenue for bringing all the children to Trumbull, doesn't come to the Trumbull Public Schools. It goes to the town. So that $240,000 that we need to pay is not offset. When we resolve this litigation, it's not offset by revenue coming back to us, because apparently the revenue that we receive from Ag Sci, is in the vicinity of $1 million, which goes back to the town. And I don't know all the details, and I don't know the entire history, but I think it's worth getting to understand how that works. Because quite frankly, there seems to be no incentive for the Trumbull Public Schools to add Ag Sci teachers, to do things that are going to cost our budget money, but not do anything on the positive side about adding revenue, because, when it comes down to it, we need to balance our budget. So interesting, because I was flabbergasted when I asked, well, why did our budget just go up by $240,000 in tuition? And that's what we basically uncovered, that it almost would have been better for us not to take care of the litigation, because now we actually, what used to be getting balanced off, they didn't pay us, we didn't pay them. Now we have to pay, and the money that comes to us is going to the town. Something to pay attention to, something to look at. Maybe it's already been resolved in previous conversations. I don't know. New to me. So, but I thought it would be, since it is important, and since it does mean a big increase to part of our budget, I want to put that out there as a point of interest. I'm sure I'll get information. All right. So the next person, if there's no other questions about this part, we wanted to move to the technology.
Technology and digital learning.
Yep. Yeah. So
Mrs. Heffley.
Yeah, we're going to start with Mr. Hackett coming up, and then we'll follow that up with Ms. Heffley.
As I mentioned in my narrative, As I mentioned in my budget narrative, the current year's technology budget has been a challenging year. I'm hoping this year is a little more straightforward. The classroom equipment account has the biggest increase for the 21-22 budget. The account contains leasing payments for previous equipment purchased. Also in the account is next year's equipment purchases, i.e. 5th grade one-to-one program, Chromebooks for PK, touchscreens, iPad replacements, and believe it or not, laptop, desktop replacements. The next item in the budget, extra time, summer help, has increased due to the Chromebook repairs and support we're currently doing. We went pre-COVID from roughly 6,500 Chromebooks being supported to 8,500. And right now, we changed our service model drastically during the year. Other accounts are supported by this budget with little or no increase. Wide area network supports all our Wi-Fi, all our telephones, intercom systems, day-to-day routine of technology. District software support is also an account that should be noticed. Supports all our Microsoft, now our Google Enterprise, all our firewall utilities and services, endpoint protection for all our desktops, Smart Learning Suite, Go Guardian, and many, many more. Accounts that were reduced this year were instructional equipment in the audiovisual account due to currently replacing 4th and 5th grade smartboards. What we do with that is as we replace the smartboards and projectors, we use those working parts and funnel them down to other classrooms that haven't been upgraded.
Good.
Good.
By 8 points, second half.
Sounds gonna be good.
Another account that's been decreased in technology department is contract maintenance. With the horsepower of all the machines and all the web hosting services, we have moved several applications to the cloud, which saves us a great deal of service care packs for servers and allows us to be more efficient administering the cloud web-based systems. I know Mr. Kerr would agree with that. Does anybody have any questions?
Anyone with a question for Mr. Hackett? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hackett.
I'm sorry, Chairman Timpanelli?
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
It's Mr. Palo. I do have a question, and I was trying to look back on the previous tabs to see if it was out there, but on the bottom of page 6-20, where we have the breakout of the classroom computer equipment, the 720,171.
That's correct.
Do we have that breakout for 2021? The 593,360?
We do in the leasing waterfall. That,
Would you know those two numbers?
I have not. I can tell you the 21-22 budget consists of 233,000.
Yeah, no, I was looking for 2021, the breakout.
I can get that to you, Mr. Pillow.
Okay, thank you.
We'll get that answer to you.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a question for Mr. Hackett? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hackett.
Madam Chairman, can I say just one thing? Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mike.
Hello,
Mike, go ahead.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Yes,
go ahead, Mike.
Jeff, just one quick observation. Okay, Jeff, one observation. How are things going this year with our program? Students are home on distant learning. How much have you been involved picking up to make sure every student has a computer that works?
That was part of my increase in my budget for extra time and extra summer help. We're struggling, but we're doing it. Again, we have 8,500 devices out there. And a lot of them are home. Some are in schools. So yeah, we're doing it.
So we have 100% of our kids, right? 100% of our.
Mike, he said there's 8,500 that are out.
Correct.
8,500 are out, Mike. That's what he's given out.
And a majority of them are at home right now, obviously.
And the majority are at home right now, he said. Okay?
Thank you, Jeff. Do a nice job.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hackett. And Mrs. Heffley now.
Can I ask one quick follow-up at Scott?
Go ahead.
So the earlier, I think relative to this year, during one of our meetings, it was referenced that the leasing program that we had for the Chromebooks for years, for the most recent years, we were leasing all of the Chromebooks as opposed to buying them outright, as I recall. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but did that change, and is that reflected here? Like, what's the impact of that change if it did occur?
The total number in the budget increase, the 233 minus the 721 is our leasing payments for the previously purchased equipment for the last 5 years.
Okay, and we're not leasing going forward. Is that what's happening?
We are leasing going forward.
We are going to be able to continue to do that.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Mrs. Heffley, now you can come up. Thank you, Mr. Hackett.
And I'll direct everybody that the technology page was kind of out of order, at least maybe my slide was. So we're back to page 6-9 in the budget book, 6-9, as Ms. Heffley comes up to talk about digital learning.
So first, I just want to talk about the budget items that you see in front of you. The budget items under the digital learning account, there's actually 2 account codes. It represents a decrease, and there's a reason for this. We moved to a hosted solution for Infinite Campus, which saved us money. I continuously look at the modules that we have for Infinite Campus and determine, are we using them to its full functionality? Can we reduce the number of licenses? So we've made some adjustments to the licenses there. We did have a need late last year to look into purchasing the online registration module from Infinite Campus for about $13,000, which would allow us to do kindergarten and new student registration. Parents can do it from online. We can automate the processes from here. So we were able to get that module also by reducing cost and cost savings with licensing that we purchased and reducing that amount. So we're actually asking for a decrease in our software maintenance agreement for next year, and that's why. So I want to spend the most of my time, I can answer any questions related to that, and then I want to talk a little bit about the position that's in there for the data specialist.
Right, anyone with a question? No? Okay, continue.
So I just want to give you a brief explanation on why we believe this position is necessary. This is not the same position that we eliminated back in June. The previous position we had in June was a data entry position. The person primarily reset passwords, created parent portal accounts, helped parents with parent portal accounts, and we've now automated that. So now if you forget your password, you click on the forget your password link, and it actually sends that to you automatically. So really the work that that person was doing in the office, we really didn't have a need for going into this particular school year. What we are looking for is someone who can help us improve our data systems. We have a tremendous amount of data systems. We have Infinite Campus, and then we have about 15 other systems that we have to feed data to. Right now, that is a very manual process. So I take a file out, I put a file into another system. When a new student starts, we have to enter the same student in 15 times. I really want to focus my efforts on building scripts and automating that so it makes the district more efficient. We've also had, if you know anything about the state reporting, the state keeps increasing the amount of state reports you need to do. I currently spend a full 6 months just doing nothing but state reporting. Now we have to do a monthly attendance report that we have to provide to them. I also get a number of increases of data requests. The NESDAQ report you saw for enrollment, I have to provide all those numbers to them for them to put those reports together. The special ed budget you're going to see on Wednesday, I have to provide all that data for 5 or 7 years worth of data. In addition, I mentioned the online registration system. That system, I could have had up and running in 2 to 3 weeks, and I'm 2 months into it and it's not done yet. The problem is I'm so involved in the day-to-day reporting stuff that needs to be done that I can't focus on building the systems and making it more efficient. If we don't fund this new position, well, it's just going to take us longer to do things. It's going to take us longer to do things. There's going to be things we simply can't do. And I honestly believe that the district needs to put some effort into making our systems more efficient, automating some of these things, taking away the labor and manual tasks that we do a lot of and multiple people have to get involved in order to move the district forward. I honestly believe you'll get a return on your investment by filling this position by increased efficiency, elimination of redundant processes, and reduction in duplicate costs. I think the $50,000 we spend to get somebody who's fairly technical, who can help automate these things, we're gonna get back tenfold. We did some things over the years. I think you probably remember the lunch system we automated last year so that people who had negative balances talked into the messenger system. Cost us $1,200 to do. And in the 3 months we had it going, we had recouped so many losses from unpaid lunch fees. So those are the kinds of things I want to focus my efforts on, but I really need somebody to help with all that day-to-day automation stuff that needs to happen.
Okay, does anyone have a question for Mrs. Heffley?
I don't have a question. I again would make a comment. I would speak in support of this position also, because I understand. I've always been somewhat conflicted about, how much of the work that Ms. Heffley has to do that is really like just data reporting. And I'm familiar with it because like literally a good portion of my own job is doing what she's describing, and it's painful and it's extremely time consuming, and it's no joke that the state has, not only have they increased what we have to provide to them, but they've gotten better about haranguing us about it, right? Like they are not giving up. So I can understand why you're feeling the way you are, and that we need to probably have some support in that area. So I just wanted to offer those words of support.
Dr. Summer?
And I just want to add, I think that we're also leaving an incredible resource on the table. Like you say, Scott, we've got this incredible gifted person here, Ms. Heffley, who's able to do so much for us, and yet she has to spend so much time. I might be just restating what you're saying, but I've seen her work and what she's able to do. And I am just, if we add this position, I think we could really make some huge progress along some major fronts. So I'm excited about how this small amount of money, and I did put a little star there and say, yes, another unfunded mandate from the state of Connecticut, because people always want to know what are the unfunded mandates. Here's one. We have to add this position because they keep adding all kinds of responsibilities to the district. So when we talk to our legislators, we can just keep reminding them how they just keep heaping on these different responsibilities for boards, but with no additional funding to do it. But Christina's incredibly talented at what she does, and I'd love to see her do more of it.
I'll add on, Dr. Semmel, that I think one of the requests that I had written down was that we look at that position in the context of Christina's job description and what you hope that she'll be able to do, and so that we'll be able to see and show others that her work will be closer to the classroom and have a greater impact on students if we can get some of this administrative stuff taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presenter is elementary schools, Mr. Pacquiao.
How's that? Can you hear me? Well, thanks for having me up this evening. I just want to give a shout out to teachers. I think we've heard a lot of positives about Wonville doing a great job to support us. But I can tell you what you see of me talking with a mask, my glasses fogging up probably is like, oh, maybe I stutter a little bit. Teachers are doing a good job working with students, whether it's at home or in the classroom. So we're looking forward to the students' return today. And again, the teachers have done a fantastic job. I think in Trumbull, we got up and running really quickly in terms of remote learning, and great support from Christina and everybody over at Long Hill. We really appreciate it. And I think the families, the emails I get at least 3 or 4 emails each week from parents who are very appreciative, and they know how hard the teachers are working. So again, thanks for your support. Maybe we should have an informal motion that we all get masks for the next budget session, TPS, but then have the dollar sign at the S. It might be appropriate. But as we go through my sheet, it's very short, and you're going to notice one thing that Dr. Budd said, they're modest restorations, and that is not because Dr. Semmel didn't ask us what we wanted. He had a completely open door policy in terms of what we wanted in our elementary schools. And so like a kid going to Dairy Queen, we asked for all the flavors, but we understood that this budget had to be representative of all levels, and it had to be appropriate in terms of a number. Otherwise, we might be seen as gluttonous. So you may ask as I go through these, well, is that really enough? Obviously, we'd love to have more scoops, but we're going to go for at least just one this first time around. So the first item on my list is the library books. It's pretty straightforward, but I think it's important you understand what our teacher librarians are currently doing. They're serving 2 roles. Not only are they a teacher librarian, but they're also handling a lot of the tech and the Google Classrooms and problems that arise during the day. So they literally run around that building to help teachers, but also help parents on the phone also. So one of their big things they've done recently, the past few years with upgrades to Destiny, which is our online catalog, is they've been able to analyze their collection. So there's a great line from a librarian across the country that said, hoarding is not collection development. So our goal with our libraries is not to just have lots of books. We do use the ALA, which is the American Library Association's standards for keeping our collections fresh. So I thought it'd be helpful to just hear some data from one school. So for example, at Daniels Farm, which is currently the largest elementary school, we have 19,541 books. That's an average of 33.7 books per student, with the ALA's recommendation being 15 to 20 books per student. The average age of the collection, though, is 1999. So that's 21 years old. That's the age. So we couldn't get the median out of the software product, but that's the average age. 3 years ago, when Mrs. Ferraro got there, our teacher librarian, the average age was 1991. So she was able to weed the collection and buy new books that year that updated our average age by 8 years. So that's really what weeding means. When you hear that, it's comprehensively going through your collection. Each year, there's about 20,000 new published children's books in the country, adding what's appropriate and trying to keep a balance between fiction and nonfiction at roughly 50 to 50%. Sometimes you'll see the ratio is more like 40-60 in recommendations, but it's somewhere around there. So when you go back through the budget, this is one of those things when you don't take care of your sock drawer, you're going to have an imbalance in there, right? You're going to have a lot of socks with holes in them. You're going to have the wrong socks in there. You have to do it yearly with your sock drawer. So in 2019-20, we received $4,834 at Daniels Farm School. Now the ALA recommends a yearly budget of around $12 to $15 per student. So at 500 students, that comes out to around $6,000. So 2 years ago, we were already 1,200 in the hole based on what ALA recommends. The current year was 0. So when you add those together and average them, now you're back to $2,300, $2,400 per year. You're a good $3,500 underneath the average. So each year you get behind within the library collection, it gets harder to weed it and keep it up to date. Because remember, it's not about just hoarding, it's about making sure you have the best quality text in that library. Okay, any questions on that part so far? The other thing I thought that might come up was why not more ebooks exclusively? So we did a little research on that for you also. So the popular title, I'm sure many of your children or grandchildren have read, is Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So when we buy library books for the Learning Commons, it's not like you would go to the store and just buy a typical book and bring it back to the media, to the Learning Commons. That's not how it works. Books bound with a very extensive cover. It's labeled correctly so it fits into your system. So Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which you might get for, I don't know, $13 hardcover in a store, it costs $24.95 bound, but it also comes with a lifetime guarantee that it'll be replaced if it's damaged, right? An ebook for Diary of a Wimpy Kid is only $12.82 a year. So you might say, well, that's a savings of around $12, but that's an subscription for 1 year. So buying books is still a good business. It's a good thing to have. And we don't want our kids on the screens all the time. There's a certain positivity to going to a joint space, looking at the titles and picking something and being excited about it. It's kind of like when record albums used to get released and you got excited about the cover. So we're looking for around $5,000. You'll notice that Boot Hill's a little higher, but it's not because they're trying to get more than everybody else. Their collection is far smaller. They have about 9,000 books. And they did an extensive weeding probably 5 years ago, and they're trying to catch up with this. So this would be a future item as our budget hopefully gets back to being a little bit healthier, that we want to beef up, get rid of the older books, and let those teacher librarians do what they're doing because they're doing an incredible job. So any questions on that item? And next time you visit the schools, when it's okay to come, that's a great place to go check out what's being done in there because it is quite incredible. Furniture is the next item. So we are beginning to replace older furniture. This is not a complicated item. Desks, chairs, kidney-shaped tables for small group instruction, cafe tables. We received $0 in the current year, and we're looking for about $2,000 this year. Furniture is expensive, as you know, at home. School furniture is even more expensive and hard to get, and it takes a while to mix and match. So that's an item that we're hoping the district will look more at as a yearly expenditure just to keep up to date like we do with our library. Certain things you have to put on the menu every year and keep buying them to get it to the point where you've stabilized it. Now it costs less every year to keep it where you want it to be. So it's a long-term plan. And I think what happened this year with COVID and having to move things around, you know, it's like at home. You look under the rug, you might notice some things you didn't like. You look at the gutters, you realize it's time for them to go, and same with the furniture. Any questions on that? Okay, then the most important items here, I'll take a little bit more time on this one because I tend to rush too much when I get up here, is the reduction in our literacy consultants and our math specialists. This was the biggest hit at the elementary level, and one could argue it was the biggest hit across the K-12 level, pre-K-12 level, because when we don't intervene appropriately on behalf of our youngest children, we miss a golden window of opportunity to make sure their foundation is strong so that our teachers in upper grades, intermediate 3 through 5, in middle school and high school can take them to greater heights. When you have students that fall behind early because they can't get proper intervention, what happens is they become downtrodden, right? They don't like school. They think less of themselves, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So this is a huge item. The research on early intervention is well established. It's not worth discussing or arguing about, and I didn't think you would argue. But my point here is we really had an excellent standard in Trumbull. It was a shame this had to go because this is something that I'm convinced in a few years you will see very negative effects from this not being in place. So for example, I'll give you a quick one in intervention. And again, I use Daniels Farm School because that's where I work. Last year, our 2 literacy consultants saw an average of 59 students a day for intervention. So when you look at the numbers, we have roughly every year, we end up at least 500 students, usually over. We get about 45 to 50 move-ins over the summer, not counting kindergarten. And they come from all over the place. And the reason they come, quite frankly, is because they know we have Tech Ec, we have programs like Ag Science, we have a strong special education department, and we're strong community schools. So you are going to get I think a high mix of not abilities, but maybe school experiences. People that come and say, wow, our old school was not like this. So when this intervention model goes away, it's problematic. If you look at national statistics on reading, 40% of students learn to read easily. 35% learn to read with significant support, right? And 25% learn to read with intensive support. If you look at SRBI statistics across the state, they say take an average of 10 to 15% for tier 3, which is your most intensive intervention. So it's somewhere in there. When you cut that in half in terms of support, you are going to have problems down the line. It's not that our classroom teachers are not working with those students. When we talk about intervention, I want you to be clear on this. The kids are in small group intervention in the classroom, but then they're double dipped is what we like to say. And they go see one of our literacy consultants or a math specialist. In reading, we have multiple layers. Our most significant kids outside of special ed that need help see our literacy consultants. But then we also have our reading paraprofessional. And then we also have our interns that we train. So we have multi-layers, and kids don't stay in there for 6 to 8 weeks automatically. We make adjustments well before EIT meetings. So it could be teachers talking in the hallway to a literacy consultant. It could be an email, and we adjust the groups, and we keep moving the kids throughout those levels. And we only release them out of that program of 3 different levels once we're secure that they're secure that they're going to be able to handle what we gave them and move on their own with just a teacher. So when you take that away, it's just scary to what's going to happen with that. The other part of that is the coaching piece, and you can't discount that either. So if you look at a lot of the interesting information that's coming out in the last 6 months on what are really scientifically based reading programs, you'll see that even Lucy Calkins, who swore for years that only whole language, only units of study, we use the 3 cueing systems to learn. She's even now finally admitting publicly that, we underweighted funds. So the reason I mention this is 12 years ago, I was the curriculum director and I spent 90 grand in the first 2 weeks. People thought I was nuts, but we didn't have a word study program. What's the name of our word study program, Mrs. Tipinelli?
Foundations.
Come on, I'm going to give you a hint. It's got the word fun in it.
Foundations.
Very good, Jackie and Marcel. It is Foundations. It was purchased over a decade ago, right? If we didn't purchase that and put it in place, we'd be in trouble right now. Who rolled that product out? Who coached our teachers in the product? What's the answer, Mrs. Pati?
The reading consultants.
Thank you, Jackie and Marcel. You got too many gold stars. I'm going to have to turn your mic off. So my point is, I'm just checking comprehension. All right, so my point is, without the coaching, you can't advance your teachers, which is your tier 1 level, right? So you're hitting all 3 levels with these specialists, with the math too. If you go back over a decade, our district and Mary Santilli and our math specialists rolled out, what's the name of our math program? Anybody on the board? Come on.
Oh, Jackie.
It's investigations, a very difficult product to roll out because it demands a high degree of knowledge across grade levels, and it demands a high degree of connecting what you're doing in the moment to other topics. So if you don't know how to do that, you need a coach. And Mary Santilli and those math specialists made it happen to the point where we had other districts calling us for PD to come watch our teachers. And that's the standard I'd like to see us maintain. But if we don't put these things back in place, you can't keep asking the district, and if you think back to the slides Dr. Semmel shared, you can't keep underfunding and expecting more. And I think that's maybe part of what we've done poorly over the last decade. We've done very well for our families, but we haven't explained well enough how we did it. And now when it goes away, we have to re-explain it. And it's just, you're just in a much more difficult position. So both those pieces have 2 sides to them, and you have to be cognizant of both. So if you're going to add more ice cream to the cone, that's the cone I put it on. But again, Dr. Semmel did ask, but he had to create a balanced budget. He couldn't spend like a drunken sailor in here the first time through, which I fully understand. And my dad was in the Navy and my son's in the Marines, so I can make that reference. So that's all I have on those pieces. Again, thanks to Terry Buckingham and Mary Santilli and all those math specialists and literacy consultants, because honestly, our teachers who are fantastic would not be where they are without that support. So they make everything better. And for parents that maybe whose kids maybe don't access those services, don't forget that it does free up teacher time when they don't have to overwork with kids that aren't getting the extra help they need. So it's multifaceted.
Oh, can I say something? And
Yep.
again, I'm doing a little bit of speaking it. So in high school, of course, you don't have to coach in the middle school and high school. But we were part of that budget. And I think always as a former educator, I'm 100% for, all the coaches you can get. But if we have to decide, do we keep an extra staff or do we keep an extra coach? Unfortunately.
Oh, definitely.
We always look, we
Definitely.
want it all. And we're
Right, no,
trying
I
to
don't
do it
think
all.
we need to get into the politics of the board at this
Yeah,
point.
no,
The
no,
reason
it's-
the reason I'm suggesting that is,
We have
it's
no
more
choice.
about the total dollar amount. I think it's important for parents to hear that, because they understand that if we want to get back to where we were, we're gonna have to creep up a little faster. And it's gonna take a little bit of economic pain to do that. But I think we have the right person in charge to do it. And I think the key for the board is to understand our role here is to promote a strong budget, because chopping it here makes no sense, which we've nipped and tucked over the years at this level, which I always thought was a mistake. So I would just advocate on the part of the board that move it forward with the number that has been presented by Dr. Semmel, or add some, but for goodness sake, don't slash it back. We have enough levels waiting to do that.
Mr. Kutchuk, I think you know that people sitting up here would like, I think I was one of the people last year that asked why the math specialists were gone.
Right, again, it is
I was
not an
told-
indictment of anybody on the board. I just think it's just time to move forward.
Oh, of
That's what I
course.
wanted to paint a clear picture. So
We have to
we
do this.
appreciate your support.
Yeah, we all do. We all feel like that, and you know that. But I think what Dr. Semmel has done, he's done a superb job of assembling this budget to reflect our needs while trying to maintain the quality we expect. However, this has to get done incrementally. This is what I call, and I've said this before, this is what we call a rebuilding. We have to rebuild what we
Everything
lost.
you're saying right now, Mrs. Tippinelli, is what I led with.
That's what we have to
Yes,
do. We
and
have
so-
to rebuild what we've lost, but we can't go in and ask them for 8%. We can't do
Again,
that.
that's what I led with. So again, I didn't say do that.
Okay,
but
so
I
you
understand why-
understand, I know you understand where we are, so we're trying to get back what we want, and we're trying to do it.
Again, Mrs. Tippinelli, that's what I led with. So I understand.
Yes.
Thank you.
Gary, I just want to thank you for your presentation. It was very clear, and for the people out there, the taxpayers, I believe now they have a little understanding of what all those positions are and the library books. So thank you for making it a kind of presentation that parents would understand and the taxpayers.
Okay, does anyone have a question for Mr. Kunchak?
Yes. Now I want to know why they selected the Angels Farm principal to make the presentation.
You have to have some fun. If you're in this room, you know, it can get a little dry. Come on.
I do want to apologize because now I'm hungry for ice cream and, you guys are giving quiz questions. So I didn't tell you there was going to be a quiz.
I don't understand. But now, Mrs. Marcel's the only one moving forward. So we know that. Thank you.
So fast.
Nice job, Gary. Thank you.
Okay, next is our middle schools, Mr. Reichert, Mr. Sullivan, please.
Even before that little banter at the end there, I was going to start by reassuring you that I do not plan to call on any of you directly to ask questions. Instead, I really plan to start by thanking you for your ongoing support, because you're in the same position as we are, that you're always trying to provide as many resources as you can for our teachers and students, and then hoping that everyone's able to put those to maximum use. And I do have to say that over the years, I've been inspired, because no matter what the budget number is for in a given year, or where we fall in a comparison with other members of our GERD, Trumbull students continue to produce very, very impressive results. I want to give most of the credit for that to our teachers, because I think we get a very good return on our dollars because of what they're able to do with the resources that we are all able to provide them with. With that said, Dr. Semmel did reference that we have, in a sense, hit a bottom. Again, he wasn't talking about performance or anything like that, but just the depth of cuts that we've had to sustain over the last several years. Dr. Budd later provided you with a much more specific accounting of what that has meant, or what that means across the entire district in terms of the loss of interventionists in particular. And then Mr. Kunchak just spoke very, very passionately about what the effects of that are at the elementary level. But yes, I think it was Mrs. Timpinelli who just said, we're looking to build back. That's the way I was going to rephrase it. That's our job as best as we can. We can't bring everything immediately back at once, but we had very good discussions about what the priorities should be. What are the first things we can get? And that's why you see in particular at the middle school level, we're going to talk about our math interventionist position. I want to remind you of something else that Dr. Budd mentioned, which is that other cuts included our language arts chair and our math chair, our program leaders who prior to this year, their role would have been coaching, modeling, but also providing some of the interventions to students. So now that they're back fully in the classroom with a full schedule of 5 classes, in the area of math, that actually means we've lost 2 people that last year would have been providing interventions to students. And so the effect is even more than you might think. So I'm going to stop hogging the microphone and let Mr. Ricker talk more specifically about what our interventionists do and what the impact is of not having them. But maybe I can point out that technically on the priority list, math intervention is listed first, right? So that counts for something. So maybe, that's an extra plug for the importance of the interventionists to middle school. So Mr. Ricker.
Thank you to the Board of Education, Dr. Semmel, for putting together this budget request. I think something that we all saw as administrators over the past really 12 months going through 2 budget cycles and some changes in the district is that what happens at one level does have impact. And I think what the process that Dr. Semmel and Paul put together is really trying to say that we have to kind of look at this as a school district, not what each school or each level needs, but what we need together to make this work. And looking at the budget last year that we're working with this year, I really do think the Board of Education did the best they could with what they had. There were no decisions that I think anyone liked, but we had to balance the budget, and that's what we're doing right now. So we appreciate every dollar that you gave us because we know it could have been worse. So thank you. You advocated at every level, and we really appreciate that. In terms of what we want and what we need, I think that's kind of where we split hairs when we're having budget discussions. What we would want is to have a lot back. If we were to prioritize and say for the next school year, how do we lay that first foundation, build back what we had? What we need is that math intervention position, middle level. And to put that into perspective, between the 2 middle schools last year, we had 4 individuals providing math intervention for our students. Right now, we have 1 individual providing math intervention between 2 schools. She's awesome, Allison Wickander, from the high school, split time between Hillcrest and Madison. She does the best she can, but clearly, with students not being in front of the teachers as much as they were in the past in the traditional learning model, inconsistent learning models due to circumstances completely out of their control, our students' needs are going to continue to grow. And that's just the nature of the beast that we're in right now. So this year we are making it work with 1 interventionist between 2 buildings. What we are already seeing in terms of observational data and through curriculum-based assessments and our diagnostic assessments, that gaps are growing with our kids that are in the buildings right now based on the learning models that we've had through COVID-19. When we go into the school year next year, the 21-22 school year, we feel incredibly strong that we need to have a dedicated math interventionist at each building so that we can provide math intervention 5 days a week for our students. Those individuals are coaching our math teachers to provide the best tier 1 strategies. So maybe we don't need to go to tier 2. Then when tier 1 doesn't work, they're pushing into those classes, they're pulling kids out. And then for those students that need tier 3 interventions, they're doing one-on-one to a very small group interventions, 3-4 times a week to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our kids. And it's great to have current and former educators on the board that know the importance of this and to catch these deficits as early as we can so that we put them in the best position, not just the middle level, but knowing that they have a rigorous course ahead of them, high school and beyond. So I'm happy to answer any questions with math intervention, but again, thank you for supporting us for this budget year that we're in right now and the one that we're planning for next fall.
Does anyone have a question for Mr. Riker?
No.
No? Okay, thank you very much for coming tonight and presenting to us.
And happy holidays, and I'll see you guys.
Thank you, you too. Okay, before we move on, there's one agenda item that we're going to need to add. Mr.
Yes,
Gal is going to do that, right?
Madam Chair, if I may, I need to make a motion to add the approval of the resolution and rate for the Bank of America. And Dr. Semmel, if someone can second the motion, we can have some discussion, and Dr. Semmel will explain.
I'll second the motion.
Objecting, Marcel seconds. Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Semmel?
Yep, so I'm actually asking Mr. Hendrickson to come up here, but in general, this is about one of the questions that came up tonight, which is the loan process we use for technology. And there's one built into your, for this current year. We just need to actually get the loan, and Mr. Hendrickson will talk to you about where we are with this and what we need to do.
This is actually to fund part of Jeff's budget for this year, the $733,124,000. Payments start next year. It is included, they are included in the budget. This is what was previously known as the TD bank loans that the Board of Ed arranged staggered terms, a 4-year term, and have 4 loans outstanding at any one time, and one loan dropping off each succeeding year. When I first came here, I found it a little disconcerting that the Board of Ed could go out and borrow money. It should be with the town because the town has the revenue raising authority. So in conversations with Steve Studer, who drew up the original TD bank loans, and Joe Centopani, who is the external auditor looking at us, I asked them to come up and reach an agreement as to what is the best method to go. And they said structure the agreement similar to what the Bank of America energy arrangement is. That is, having the town execute the lease or financing arrangement, and then have the Board of Ed have an MOU with the town that the Board of Ed would make payments on the financing arrangement. We went out to TD Bank and found that they wouldn't give us a loan for less than $1 million or $2 million, but Bank of America would. And we've got an interest rate of 1.1%, which over the life of the loan was probably a total of $20,000 in interest payments. So, there's one phrase in here, the second paragraph from the bottom, it says, whereas the board will make payments starting in the operating budget 20/21, it's actually 21/22, and I will have that correction made before we go to the Board of Finance, and I would request approval next Thursday. But other than that, this is a very advantageous financing agreement. It's now in the proper legal framework, and I recommend your approval.
Okay, do you want to make a motion first and then we can discuss it?
The motion has been made and it has been seconded.
Okay, so questions?
Are there any discussions? Is there any discussion?
Questions? No? Okay. So we can take a vote to approve. Okay, Marie Pati? Okay.
I'm in
Mr. Gal?
favor.
Good. Mrs. Marcel?
Yes, in favor.
Mr. Kerr?
Yes, in favor.
Mr. Ward?
Yes, in favor.
Thank you. Mr. Palo?
In favor.
And Lieutenant Timpanelli in favor. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, we will move forward. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready. I think everyone heard everything tonight, and I think the message that you are getting is that we are trying to build this budget and move forward incrementally. And we hope that everyone who's heard the presentations tonight understand that what Dr. Semmel put together with his team is something that we actually need, and probably we need a lot more, but we're trying to do this respectfully and incrementally. So let us keep that in mind, everyone out there who's listening to us. So thank you, and Mr. Ward.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion that we adjourn for next Tuesday.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
I second.
Everyone seconds. Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Good night.